The best way to predict the future is to create it. Welcome to the Humanscape podcast, where we help business leaders prepare for the future of work now. Are you ready to bring work to life and life to work? We are. Let's go. We're back with another episode of the Humanscape podcast from HumanWorks 8. I'm Shawn, and I'll be joined today by my colleague, AJ Kruse. We'll be your hosts, and we'll be talking with Tom Parks, a leader at Annex Wealth Management. Before we bring Tom on, just a reminder, today's podcast exists to help organizations and leaders like you elevate people and culture for tomorrow. Here's a little bit about Tom before we bring him on. Tom Parks is a director of retirement plan services at Annex Wealth Management. His adult working life began as a volunteer for a Jesuit mission in Quito, Ecuador, after graduating from St. Norbert College. Upon his return from Ecuador, he began teaching people about the benefits of 401k plans and never looked back. He has dedicated his career to making retirement plans both fun and educational for employees and employers. He's bilingual. Maybe we'll hear some of those skills today. And skilled in coaching, retirement planning, investments, and public speaking. Whether working with people in person, creating custom videos, or developing financial education and wellness programs, he is all in and passionate about helping people invest in a more secure financial future for themselves and their families. So without further ado, AJ, let's get started with Tom.
Here we go.
Tom, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, we're grateful that you're here with us. And what a cool background. You know, when you first mentioned about Ecuador, I mentioned to you that I was just in Quito with a trip to the Galapagos and Machu Picchu. So I felt like we had a connection from the start, Tom.
Yeah, it was a good way to start going. Quito's a wonderful city, so glad you got a chance to check it out.
It is really a cool city. But what's one thing, Tom, from your bio that I didn't mention that you're most proud of? It could be personally, professionally, but something I didn't mention that you're really proud of in your background and bio.
You know, I think of all the things, I'm getting up there in years now, finally, and looking at, I have 3 wonderful children. I actually met my wife when I was living in Ecuador. And so having the kids that we have and seeing them cross cultures between their Ecuadorian heritage and being here in the United States is something that is an ongoing project. Don't get me wrong, but I'm really proud of how my wife and I have managed to do that together so far. So, and it's really meaningful to me. Obviously, I love my kids and I want them to be contributors to our society. So that one hits close to home for me.
I love that, Tom. You're going to be talking about culture, and I love cultural mix, cross-culture, how that's so important in life and work everywhere. So again, what a cool point. You know, we like to start, Tom. We have a practice of really elevating people through the 3 parts of their mind. And so I want to look at your 3 parts of the mind, your cognitive, your affect, and then your cognitive instinct. But let's start with your smarts, your cognitive. What's one thing, Tom? You know, do you have a hidden talent or skill or something you're smart about that other people may not be aware of? And again, we like to look at work and life, so it can be anywhere that way. But anything that jumps to mind when I ask you that question?
Well, I don't know if it's so much as a smart thing, but I have a propensity to try to look forward into the future to see, you know, where is what we're doing right now going to potentially end up? And mostly for the purpose of trying to avoid bad things from happening down the road. But it's just, I seem to have a pretty good skill for it because I have very often am able to say, hey, you know, if we're not careful, this might happen, or trust me, if we do this, this awesome thing will happen. And you just need to, you know, believe in getting there. So, you know, I don't know if that's so much a skill as it is a personality trait or, you know, a positive outlook on life or whatever you want to call it.
Well, you know, Tom, you know, you saying that is going to make me jump right to that 3rd part of the mind, your natural instincts. And I know you took the Colby Index with me. And when you started talking about your future focused and just the way you're wired, and I can't wait to talk to you one-on-one about your results. But it doesn't surprise me you say that because you have a drive for the future. that's natural to you, Tom. Don't you find that? That's where your head's all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think about some of the stuff I've done in the past. I'm like, we don't need to focus on that. Come on, let's look forward here.
Yeah, and I always say that your results when you took the assessment that we'll talk about really show that you should lean into I mean, that to me is just super strength, and I think that's why you connected it to your cognitive ability, because it's probably a super strength for you. It's just how you're wired that way. So that's really cool. But how about your personality? What's a favorite of yours? We're coming up, we're recording this during the holiday season. Is there a favorite movie, a favorite song, something that has been with you that you really love that way?
Well, as we come up on the holiday season, It's a Wonderful Life is just a top of mind because we're at that time of year. But I do love that movie because it gives you perspective. And I think I try to be positive. I'm one of those people. My wife is always giving me a hard time. She's like, "Oh, look at these pictures. They get the same smile all the time. It's like you're practicing it." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I do. So things that are uplifting and encouraging are my favorite things for sure.
When I was going to ask you these three questions, we always start the podcast off of the three parts of the mind. But when I was thinking about them well around you, Tom, it made me think about what you do. Helping people understand their retirement and how to plan for that or think about that. Do you think, you maybe even innately, when you're trying to look at people and support people, do you think the way they're wired cognitively and their smarts or what they know or don't know about retirement, their personality and also their natural instincts, do you think that could come into play about retirement planning and how people approach that?
For sure it does. I think one of the things I've learned over all the years of doing this, because originally I wanted to be an attorney. I argue with people all the time. And I'm the second youngest of 10 kids. So I had to, I had to argue just to stay alive. But I think, when you look at the different ways people approach their overall financial wellness, which then leads into their ability to plan for retirement, the perspective that they're coming from really does play into how we have to do messaging. That's why the way my team approaches it is when we talk about the diversity of what we bring to the table, we mean it because we figure we got to try coming at things from a bunch of different angles to make sure we're covering the broadest spectrum of the audience there. So for sure.
I love that diversity, both in intelligence and personality, and then in natural instincts. That way, that combination, I bet, is a powerful mix. If you take a step back and really make that happen and look for that, I love that, Tom. So I know when you're talking about your employees and that mix, you had shared with me that Annex has gone through a big growth period.
Absolutely. So when I started here 10 years ago, there were 30 some, I think I was like number 32 or something like that. And we just had a meeting where they said we're at 158. So it's a huge difference from where it was 10 years ago.
Well, first, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We've got such an awesome team here. It's so much fun. It doesn't surprise me that we're growing the way we are.
When I think about that's a big change. And I want to get into some things that you're doing around building a culture and how a culture evolves through that change. But if I had to ask you up front, what have been some of the biggest challenges with that rapid growth? What comes to mind with that rapid growth? Challenges that you're encountering or that you see ahead?
Yeah, I think, just in looking back on it, the culture of having a really tiny team where, you could go in, our CEO, Dave Spano, I could just go into his office and hang out for a bit. And he's got so much on his plate now. It's harder for him to do that today than it was years ago. But as we try to maintain the core values of our company and you're adding people and people, that's tricky business. I always tell Dave, I'm so just shocked that he manages to consistently find the people who fit into this, because as we look at, just in my experience working with lots of different employers, and there people always talk about how difficult it is to find people because we are in the people business. I mean, people think we're in the money business, but it's like, no way, we are in the relationship business all day long here. And finding people who will gel and kind of pull in the same direction with that mission. We don't always get it right 100% of the time, but I think we've done a good job with that. It's a challenge though.
Well, Tom, you're speaking our language because you said two words that we talk about all the time, and those are the words core values. So when you said them, though, you were saying, hey, to keep those front of mind, almost like your North Star, as your company goes through this growth and continues to. So I just want to ask about those core values, or how have they guided you? How have you had to lean on them through different changes and things that you've gone through besides adding people?
Well, our core values are, knowledge, accountability, integrity, courage, and respect. Courage is an important one if we want our business to keep growing. I think integrity is a huge one for me. Sticking to what you really believe and not compromising on the core principles. Now, I think it's important to compromise, broadly speaking, but you have to have certain things that you're tethered to, and just not yielding on those, I think, is very important. And it is difficult because there are these, there are distractions out there that kind of call to you and you're like, hey, what if, So having that discipline is key. And it's good to be surrounded by the right people because that makes it easier, as far as I'm concerned. So it's kind of funny how it feeds itself.
Definitely. As I think about that big picture, Tom, too, I'm wondering in the work you do, which Shawn brought up a little while ago, values are so important to you as an organization. I'm guessing you see how values play out in the lives of the people you're serving, so especially when making a plan for their future, their long-term financial future. Is there a way that you go about learning that about someone you're working with, or maybe the team at Annex has a way of learning more about people that way when you're serving them?
Yeah, I think the relationship process. So my primary focus is working with employers. And so I get to really on the front end understand what's the culture of that company. And then that really helps inform how we approach dealing with all of their employees on a personal basis, because Annex primarily serves families actually and individuals. The relationship managers do have a process by which they go through. And then obviously they're leveraging their unique God-given talents to uncover those things. But I think that's where the courage part for us is important, to be willing to be yourself, because you kind of feel like, it's a financial services company. We need to be buttoned up and all this stuff. Obviously, you want to be knowledgeable and professional and all that stuff, but people want to know that they're dealing with a real person. So it's different for every person, but we talk about it and encourage people to be themselves and be their best selves.
Yeah, well, you used a word there that, again, another word I like, speaking my language, use the word real. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think, whether it's the clients you're serving or all the employees and team members that you've grown now to include 158, it's amazing. People can tell when something's not real. So they're looking for real. And obviously, if you've been able to go from, 30 employees to 158, they're finding something real as a part of your team too. And I'm excited for you. That's just really cool to hear.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was having breakfast with a client and he was saying, yeah, I want to introduce you to these people, but Tom, you're not for everybody. Yeah, I'm not sure everyone can handle you. And I was like, no, I get it. And it was, he was poking fun at me, but at the same time, I am who I am, and I'm not going to try to pretend to be somebody else just to earn a client, or earn a relationship, because then it won't really be a relationship as far as I'm concerned. So being real is important for sure.
I love that. And I know, I imagine when you're growing that way, that it's causing the company to build some different ways of running the organization or operationalizing it or building some new disciplines. And the viewers may not see that, but I see you're nodding your head to me, Tom, which I think is great. We help a lot of organizations, what we say, and build their organizational way, their way of operationalizing their strategy, their planning, and connecting people to that vision, and really seeing how their way of working and what I'm doing in my role connects to a bigger vision and a bigger future for a company. And you had mentioned that you just read What the Heck is EOS? And you're sort of touching and sort of looking at that. What stands out from you if you're going down that EOS, maybe more traction model, that you think is going to help you solve problems or give you a path forward around this strategic planning?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. You prepped me for this question. It was hard because there's a lot in there that I think will be helpful. But if I look back at the growth of our firm from where we were to where we are today, and I mentioned before being able to walk into Dave's office and just kind of hang out at random without an appointment or anything like that, and that's more difficult than it used to be. But I think systematizing things to a degree and having a clear, defined manner of interaction, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it's helping in a way, it helps us maintain that culture by, kind of letting people see what's going on, broadly speaking. I think tunnel vision is such a dangerous thing, and it's so easy to happen when you got lots of stuff going on at work. You just kind of see what's in front of you. So pulling back and kind of letting everyone see, and we're early on in this EOS process, so I have a ton to learn about it, but just based on what I've seen for the foundation of how it's going to work, I think I'm really, really excited. There's so many things about it that make me excited. I like accountability. I'm a big fan of accountability. So I'm looking forward to it. Not that people aren't accountable, but one of the things I was thinking about too is we are an awesome team, and there are a lot of very capable people who work here. And sometimes that leads to, let's say there are 10 people in a conversation, 4 of them are very capable and willing to do whatever the thing is that needs to be done. Well, if you're not very precise and, straightforward about things, you sometimes maybe hypothetically walk away from that conversation and everyone assumes that one of those 4 people is doing it, and maybe it's not necessarily getting done. So just having that, I think will be really helpful. I'm looking forward to it big time.
And I think you're on the right path. Some of the things you say, we try to model with organizations we work with, Tom, saying, you can look at a practice or a certain discipline, whether it's EOS, whether it's another model, and you have to find your way to use that and make it your own. And you use the word systemize to a point or to a certain thing. And I think that's wise, because one size does not fit all that way. And it also depends on where your organization is in its growth. And you sort of have to sort of layer that in and build it as you grow. But I like how you're trying to say it should help you solve the challenge of tunnel vision or silos that way, where you're sort of caught, because everyone will be able to see that bigger future and have a way of contributing back to it. So
Yeah, well, and it goes the other way too. I usually do not suffer from tunnel vision. I suffer from way too broad a vision. And it's like, hey, Tom, we got to narrow this down a little bit here. Focus. So I think both ways it'll work really well.
I love that. So it's that expansion and retract sort of both
Yeah.
ways. I think what you're trying to build will help with that. And one thing you mentioned as far as getting everybody contributing, that's one of when we call our beliefs around the 8. One is everyone contributes. Are you doing any specifically or any practice you're doing to make sure that you hear everyone's voices or get everyone involved in what's next or what's happening, whether it's now or in the future?
We have team meetings here as it pertains specifically to the implementation of EOS. We're not there yet. So our president, Jeff Pierce, who joined the firm about 6 months ago, he is really bringing this, he's leading the charge on that. And he's done a great job, I think, he's just doing his homework. He's getting to know everyone. He's doing a lot of information intake, I guess, what I would call it. And I'm pretty sure he's using all that information to kind of figure out how to go about moving forward with things. So the cool thing he and I have talked about, is we have a bunch of screens inside of our office that are in the interior part that only the employees can see. And I think that we're going to try to leverage that technology to say, hey, here's, kind of a keeping people informed of the progress and things like that. Maybe make a little competition out of it. I might have suggested that, but we'll see. So we're very fortunate to have a lot of great resources at our disposal. It'll just be, and I'm sure there are going to be some trial and error in here, but yeah, technology will definitely play a role in everyone being on the same page.
That sort of gets me thinking about just having a new leader. I think, the first time you and I met, or you were telling me a little bit more about Annex, you mentioned a new CEO and saying it's sort of a big shift for us. It's a big change for us. And just a little bit ago, you also mentioned, our founder being able to pop in anytime. So now you've got a founder, now you've got a CEO, and you're sort of organizing yourself around a way of working or a system of working together. What's that leadership change been like? Or maybe what have you seen from a new leader where you go, I love that. Maybe I can adopt that or take that on into my own leadership practice.
Dave is our founder and CEO. Jeff is the president and COO, and the two of them together. So Dave stepped away from the president role to, remain as CEO, but the two of them are different from one another, just personality wise and what they gravitate toward, which is really cool. It seems from, I'm not in their meetings or anything like that, but as far as I can tell, they get along well and they trust each other, which I think is the most important thing for people at that level, because there's the important decisions are going to be made. And they need to be made and then implemented, and, success or fail, we got to try stuff and move forward. So, and I think that's where, when I look at Dave and Jeff and how they're working together, they have very complementary skills and personality types. So far it's been really cool. And it's nice to see Dave, because I have a personal relationship with Dave after all these years, and to see some of the weight off of his shoulders, it's nice. The guy's earned it after all the years of building this business. So the collaboration is cool to see, for sure. And I think it's being felt throughout the organization. People really feel, okay, we know there's a direction, we keep growing and growing, but there's continuity and leadership and all that stuff. So it's good.
So as you start looking at your own leadership, as you start looking at how you see these other leaders around you leading, it's got to be a major balance, I would think, especially during a period of growth, of driving to hit these business goals and, business priorities. And at the same time, balancing that against, this is a place that people want to be, Tom. You've hired a lot of people, and that's so exciting, but they want to be there. So there's something around happening in a good way around their growth and their development. So how do you balance that? Or what's your approach to balancing, hey, we've got to hit these targets, but at the same time, we want to see you grow as a person and get stronger and better right alongside Annex?
So there are a couple of ingredients, and this is going to sound totally corny, but I really genuinely care about the people on my team and everybody else here, but the people for whom I'm responsible. I care about them, and I really like them. That helps for sure. And they know that. They know that I do. And I tell them that I'm the protector. So, we have to be open and honest. And I have been accused of being excessively candid on things, but I'd rather be totally open and honest. And, sometimes it's a little rough edge here and there, but they always know exactly where they stand with me, and I with them. So I think encouraging the danger with the open communication thing is, as far as I'm concerned, if you have people who don't really care and respect for each other, that can get really ugly really fast. And so I think the key foundation is have people who care about each other and respect each other. And then from there, unleash the open communication, because, and I've told my team too, I used to say, don't worry, you're not going to hurt my feelings. And I've changed that. And I've said, you know what? Every once in a while, you're going to criticize some of the stuff I'm doing. It is going to hurt my feelings, but don't worry about it. I'll get over it, and we'll move on, and we'll all be happier afterwards. So that's how I approach it.
I love it. And I heard the word respect. You have to have a foundation of respect. Then I'm hearing your values again. So it's sort of like, as long as we're all living those values, yeah, can we be candid? Can we throw it all out there? Can we have that open dialogue? Yes. And maybe you hurt my feelings, and that's okay, but it's all about making what we're doing stronger or better. And I hear that in what you're saying too. So that, to me, that would be, I'm just telling you, Tom, that would be the kind of team I would be on, because I think I've also been accused of a little bit of radical candor, or, being a little too open with, do we need to know all that? I think you do. I'll tell you anything. I know Shawn sometimes says I'm an open book. You just have to ask.
Well, sometimes you don't even have to ask. You're going to get it, whatever.
You might get more than you bargained for, is all I'm saying. So, no, I love that response. Thanks for giving an insight just into your leadership too. You're one leader working over here that way. You're probably surrounded by other leaders who might have a little bit of a different way though. So I guess my last leadership question for you is, how do leaders get on the same page as far as the other leaders of other teams there at Annex with you? You have this way, your style, your strength. Maybe they have something totally different, or they come with a different 3 parts of the mind. What do leaders do to get on the same page?
It's interesting because the services that we offer are all combined to achieve the goal. However, we have the investment team, and then there's the financial planning team and the estate planning team, and then the client service team. And each of those has a different number of team members. So, if you got 15 people and you have, in my case, you got 3, it's going to be different. But we all, I don't know, just organically, we engage with one another. There are monthly meetings that we have. I don't think I could give you an exact prescription for how it works, other than that it does. And then the way some of the managers are with their teams, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way that would work over here. but there's no way what they do would, that the way I do stuff probably wouldn't be so great either. So respecting that again and appreciating it and then helping each other kind of shore up each other's shortcomings is handy for sure.
Definitely. When they need to think big or broad or see things they're not seeing, they just got to give Tom a call. They just have to pull a bird. Say, Tom, I got to think bigger about this because I hear you doing that all the time.
Yeah, give me some crazy ideas. I'm always good for that.
I like a crazy idea, Tom.
I'm a huge fan of crazy ideas.
Exactly. So do you have any crazy idea that's in your head that you haven't shared with the world moving into the new year of 2025?
I look at 2025 and just looking ahead to not only the growth of our firm, but just what's going on with technology and, how to, again, to engage with people, because that's what I love to do. And it's harder and harder unless you're on their phone, because that's what they're engaged with for the most part. And so looking for ways to get to people and then get them to take a look up and around is something that's important to me personally and will be helpful, I'm sure, in business as well.
Fantastic. Boy, the time has gone fast, but I want to sort of highlight some things that jumped out to me. And AJ, you're welcome to add in, Tom, if anything jumped out at you. But there were about at least 5 things from our short conversation that jumped out at me that I want to highlight. One was you think of Annex, the wealth management. You said it's not about the money, it's a people business. And I think more and more organizations, no matter what you're in or what you're doing or what you're focused, you got to get back to the people. And that's got to be the foundation. I heard that loud and clear from you, Tom. So that's the first thing I just want to, for our listeners, no matter what you're in, it's around people. That's where it starts. The other thing, you brought up your values and you really highlighted courage and integrity. And I really love that. And you said that if you're living from a place of values, you have to stick to those beliefs. You have to stick to them and they have to be guiding principles. So I wanted to call that out as something that really, really spoke to me. And you also said it just that's authenticity. And AJ brought up being real, is that don't be somebody you're not. And you can't be for everybody. And I think that's one thing I agree also with you, Tom, that I always say, not everybody's going to like me, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, nobody's perfect, right?
Exactly. And, sometimes I've stopped trying to be that, I've got to be me. And that's flaws and all as far as that goes, because I think that realness, I love how you said that. You also said with this growth, one thing that you're trying to look at is trying to build an organizational practice or way of doing strategy and planning and thinking about that. And we 100% agree with that. And I loved how you said that it not only addresses the challenge of tunnel vision, maybe by expansion, but also brings people back into focus that may be too out there. So it kind of works both ways, Tom. So I love that insight, because I think sometimes people think it's all around sort of bringing people, getting them back, but it works both ways. So I love that. I could go on and on, but one other thing you said, you started at something, you said, well, this could be corny, but you gave me a great idea. Care is never corny, Tom. It's not. And I think sometimes when people think of that as sort of a soft skill, we as human beings think, then we label that or diminish it. You just taught me never do that. Care is never corny, because as you said, as long as people know it, it unleashes this power, whether it's communication or action that way if they feel it. So those were some of the highlights that jumped out at me, Tom. What do you think about those? Do you agree with some of those things?
Yeah. I meant, in terms of corny, we don't know each other well enough for you to know if I'm being totally honest with that. That, people say all sorts of stuff all the time to make themselves sound good. But for me, it really is important, because I think it is something that people overlook is, we are all people and we all have stuff going on in our lives. Everybody does. I mean, there are like 3 things going on in my life today that I did not know were going to be happening when I woke up this morning that are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm even having this conversation, and the thing is, everybody does. So if you just care about people and say, I have no idea what that person's going through. And if you look at things that way, it's amazing how much more patient you'll be with people, I think. And then it makes all this other stuff easier. So thank you for saying it's not corny. I agree with you, but whatever.
It's not. It's true. You're speaking the truth, Tom. So keep speaking it, because we really believe in that. And moving forward, if people want to find out more about Annex and what you do. What resources do you provide to leaders, to organizations, or ways to connect with the good work you're putting out there around financial well-being and thinking well about people? Anything you'd want to highlight, Tom?
Sure. I am a huge fan of our YouTube channel because we produce a ton of content on a really broad array of topics and with multiple people doing it. So Brian Jacobson does an awesome job with economic things. And then we have Matt Morsey on the investment team, and Eric Strom is doing financial planning stuff, and on and on. If you check it out, you'll see. Same thing with our radio programming. We do 4 different radio shows and talk about these things. And it's really cool because you get to see just the interaction and the dynamic resources that we have from a human perspective, human resources at Annex. I would say go to the annexwealth.com. If you check out the events page, that's a really cool place too, because we host a lot of virtual but in-person events as well on, again, all sorts of stuff that might surprise people coming from a financial service company.
So check that out. A lot of good stuff around well-being from a lot of different points of view. And listeners, thanks for joining us for this episode. And remember to subscribe to the show wherever you can get your podcast, and learn more at humanworks8.com/podcast. And if you want to know more about what I'm thinking about, you can also subscribe to my Wondering Wednesday on LinkedIn. Thanks again, Tom. AJ, thanks for this conversation around lifting and elevating people and culture. And thanks to our listeners today. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. Now it's up to you. See you next time.